The traditional image of the Yadav community begins here, in the quiet grazing lands of antiquity, following the peaceful herdsmen known as Gopas and their mythical ties to the flute-playing Lord Krishna. But in November 1962, that image was replaced by the thin air of Rizong law. High in the Himalayas, 114 Ahir soldiers of the Indian Army held their ground against 1,300 Chinese troops, fighting almost to the last man in one of the most brutal stands in modern military history. This map shows the scale of that legacy today. Collectively known as Yadavs and Ahirs, the community makes up roughly 20% of India's population and is a major demographic force in Nepal. The reputation of the quiet cowherd and the reputation of the frontline warrior appear to belong to two different worlds. To find the connection between them, we have to look past the myth to a massive historical merger between two groups that were once completely distinct. The Rig Veda identifies the Yadu as one of the original Indo-Aryan tribes of the early Vedic period, established long before the rigid caste structures of later centuries took hold. Puranic tradition holds that this tribe was barred from the traditional center of power. King Yayati allegedly cursed his eldest son, Yadu, decreeing that no descendant of his could ever inherit the main imperial throne. This exile forced the Yadavas onto a separate trajectory. Denied the traditional Somavansha empire, they built a parallel identity as independent, mobile cattle herders who operated outside the standard royal hierarchies. The Mahabharata records a moment where these two identities actually clashed. After the Great War, a group of pastoral tribesmen called the Abhiras ambushed the hero Arjuna, looting the wealth of the Yadava royals he was escorting. This recorded conflict clarifies the early relationship. The elite Yadu royals and the wandering pastoral Abhiras were not originally the same people. They were adversaries. This timeline illustrates a fusion that took centuries to complete. As both groups migrated through Gujarat and the Deccan, shared religious traditions centered on Krishna and the social pressures of Sanskritization pulled the two groups into a single cultural orbit. By the late medieval period, the names Abhira and Yadava were being used synonymously. The pastoralist and the royal had merged into a single social class. The modern Yadav identity is the direct result of this integration, a community that carries the history of the cattle pen and the royal court at the same time. This merger created a new kind of power. By leveraging their enormous cattle wealth and providing cavalry to local kings, the Yadavs transformed from wandering tribes into indispensable military governors. The Suna dynasty followed this path to total dominance. They began as local governors for larger empires, but as the central authorities weakened, they declared independence, seizing control of the strategic trade routes across the Deccan Plateau. Their administration standardized the region's governance by formalizing Marathi as the official language for tax records and state literature, effectively displacing Sanskrit in the halls of power. Further south, the Hoysala branch used their wealth to fund a massive architectural expansion, commissioning these intricate stone temples in Mysore that became the center of a new, highly organized urban economy. By the end of the medieval era, the transition was complete. The descendants of the cursed tribe and the wandering herders were now the supreme architects of the Indian landscape. When the British arrived, they found a community with a deep historical memory of self-governance and defense. They quickly classified the Yadavs as a martial race, targeting them for heavy recruitment into the colonial army. But that same history of independence made them dangerous subjects. During the 1857 rebellion, Yadav communities were among the first to turn their training against the East India Company. At Narnal, the forces of Rao Tula Ram directly engaged British infantry. In the middle of the fighting, Rao Krishna Gopal successfully targeted the British command, beheading General Gerard on the battlefield. The ancient necessity of protecting the herd had evolved into a modernized instinct to protect the homeland from foreign rule. And this tradition leads directly back to those snowy peaks in 1962. The Veer Ahirs of the 13 Kuman Regiment were vastly outnumbered and lacked cold weather gear, yet they held their position until their ammunition ran out, eventually engaging in hand-to-hand combat to stop the advance. The Ahir Dham Memorial stands there now as a testament to that defense, a bravery so absolute that it forced the opposing army to pause and pay tribute. The Yadavs are not just a census category, they are a historical synthesis. Their identity represents a continuous line from the cattle herder to the empire builder and the modern soldier, a legacy of resilience that began with the Rig Veda and continues to shape the front line.